Totally Football Show. Today, midweek, under the lights in the Premier League. At Elland Road, Daniel Farke with all the right calls, and Farke all is what Chelsea got. At Anfield, Sunderland draw. When is a door not a door? When it's a jarring performance, once more from the champions. And Tuesday's action, 5-4, 3-4 at the Fulham Man City, and Haaland going a ton up, while for Spurs call it Day of the Not Dead Yet, as man called Romero gives shuffling group of zombies new direction. All that, plus a look ahead to the weekend's action in this Totally Football Show. Thursday, the 4th of December. Woohoo! Welcome to another Totally Football Show. Today we're in the company of Duncan Alexander.
Hello, James.
Good morning to you, Duncan. Charlie Eccleshare has dropped in as well.
Hello.
All right, Charlie. Hey. And it's a big welcome back to Dan Kilpatrick.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, Dan. Thanks for holding the door open for me earlier on.
Pleasure.
Right.
Coming out of the loo.
Yep. That's where it was. 4th of December today, Dan.
It is indeed, James.
Do you know what day that is? It's launch day. And if you're watching us on the YouTube for this new book from The Athletic, The Soccer 100, Erling Haaland's got his. He was happy about it. And I've just been flicking through, and it's, I know we're kind of promoting this, but it's really good. Of course, I dove to the sharp end of the century to find out who was where. You'll never guess who didn't make the top four. Maybe you will. I don't know. Anyway, pick up a copy and find out. Duncan, did you write any of this?
Didn't write any. I was involved in the initial ranking procedure.
All right.
What was the process? I mean, where do you start?
Well, where do you start with the history of football? People nominated lots and lots of players, and then it was kind of whittled down on a very exciting Google sheet. There's obviously going to be arguments.
Right.
When there's.
What was the bitterest fight?
I can't remember, but Dan,
what do you think is the most egregious error in there?
Well, I think Dan has one.
Well, with my Spurs and England hat on, the lack of Harry Kane.
No Harry Kane in there.
Are we allowed to give out spoilers here?
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've just given one. Yeah. There's no Harry Kane in the top 100, which I think, given that he is England's all-time record goal scorer and second in Premier League history, and was well on course to break that Shearer record before we went to Germany, I think that you could argue.
Yeah, I think you can.
But that's a huge oversight.
I think that does speak to a general underestimation of Harry
what happened
Kane.
there, Duncan?
That said, though,
Maybe there was a no Premier League trophy one filter left on back.
But then, how do you explain it unless he's in the top 5? Because I've got everyone from 6 upwards. Erling Haaland also doesn't make it. Which again, I think
Kylian Mbappe does.
Mbappe is reasonably high.
Without giving it away, Mbappe seems very high as well.
Yes,
But a great list.
Yeah,
We must say.
I'm going to say the list. There's
Gripes
always going to be
aside,
arguments,
of course, there
about
will
it.
be.
But what is, I think, something we can all agree on is the fact that it's actually really, really nicely written. I mean, it's written by the Athletic staff, the cream of the writing crop. But really fascinating stuff. Just Fontaine, I just turned it over to here. I can dive into that later on because I'm taking this baby away with me.
Should point out it's all new writing as well. It's not, dredged up from before. And
Of course it is, Duncan.
it's not all profiles. It's kind of, some of them people have gone to where that player grew up. But some of them are interviews. It's good stuff.
What was your favourite chapter then?
I can't say. I won't say.
All right,
I like Jimmy Greaves.
Do you?
I argued for him to be fairly high. So
Okay.
And the great thing about a list is it will enrage people and spark debate. And that's what it's all about.
maybe on Christmas Day, halfway through, as you've opened it and
You'd like something
your
to argue
uncle
about.
flicks through it.
Some simmering tensions come to the boil over a Harry Kane argument.
Stan, I agree. A list is good for provoking conversation, but more than anything, I think for someone like me, this is a fascinating chance to get to grips with some names that, I'm familiar with, but maybe some of the stories behind those names, not so much. Anyway, that's the 4th of December, launch day for the Soccer 100. Get yours now. If you're listening to this, though, listener, on the 5th of December, then woohoo, it's World Cup draw day. And we've got a very special Totally Extra this Saturday, reacting to all the Friday night business. That's going to be out a little bit later than usual for your Totally Extra, around about Saturday lunchtime, as we go through how the World Cup looks once the names have been pulled out of the hat. Are you excited, Dan?
I'm most excited for the Peace Prize, I think, which obviously has been given.
Oh, I know. You're going to be arch about this, aren't you? You're going to be all snarky.
No, I am excited. I think that there's something. You get a kind of childlike excitement from a big draw for a tournament, don't you? And then
especially
biggest draw.
Biggest draw. Well, yeah, it's 33% bigger this time than it ever has been before.
I was involved with some testing earlier this week, and it's not true. It's fictional, but England.
How
were
were you involved in testing?
I was working some behind the scenes work.
For FIFA?
No, at the Athletic.
Oh, right, okay.
But England came out in a group with Croatia, which was juicy.
Right.
So
The sheer amount of content that the Athletic is going to kind of start spinning out on the back of it does scare me a little
an
bit.
extra podcast, Dan.
Well, there you go.
But it's going to be great. Duncan, you're on it, I think, on Saturday.
I think so, yeah.
Also, Natalie Gedra. We've got guests from all over the world, literally. Wow. Yeah. Also, there's going to be a world-class entertainment lineup for Friday's draw. Charlie, did you know this? FIFA have they pulled out all the stops. Who have they got in their world-class entertainment lineup?
Oh, I know.
Robbie Williams. I mean,
Wow.
first name on the team sheet.
Yeah.
Andrea Bocelli.
He collaborated with Yannick Sinner, the
did he?
Italian tennis player, earlier
Doing
this
what?
year, performing a very weird song.
Okay.
I think it was translated as Dust and Glory. Very,
Dust and
very
Glory.
odd. But yeah,
Yeah.
still got it.
Clay
Rolling
Court
back the
anthem.
years.
Right. Also rolling back the years at Friday's draw apparently are going to be the Village People, asterisk, not the same Village People, but that's there, I think, perhaps for he who must not be named, who's a big fan of their output, strangely.
You've forgotten Nicole Scherzinger.
She also will be taking part in duetting with Robbie Williams. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Do you know what? I just don't know how to pronounce her surname with confidence.
I hope I've done it right.
Today, though, we're all about the Premier League and an absolutely cracking midweek round. Here's John Salt, who says, did Chelsea and Man City just show us why they won't push Arsenal for the title this season? Neither of them seems ruthless enough to get the job done. And, asked John Salt, are Wolves the worst Premier League team ever? Questions that we're going to be addressing in the course of today's show, John Salt. Although Duncan's already shaking his head to the latter part of that inquiry. We'll get on to the reasons for that very, very shortly. In the 9 matches so far, 31 goals scored. Almost a third of them came in one match on Tuesday down at Fulham. 3-0 up. Then it went to 3-1. But then they made it 5-1. So back in your box, Fulham. But Fulham didn't get the memo. They came storming back. And it finished 5-4. But for a Josko Guardiola goal line clearance, it would have been only the second ever 5-5 in the history of the Premier League. Woof!
And only the second time a team dropped points with a 4-goal lead in Premier League history.
Wow. But none of that happened. But it did remain the highest scoring Premier League game of the season. What does it mean? We'll be talking about that game soon enough. Also Tuesday up in Newcastle, Tottenham came from behind twice with that remarkable Christian Romero brace to earn a 2-2 draw. While down south, Everton won 1-0 at Bournemouth. Jack Grealish with a deflected effort. Bournemouth now just 1 point from their last 5 matches. On Wednesday, Arsenal saw Brentford 2-0 at the Emirates. They stay 5 points clear now at the top. Chelsea, though, lost 3-1 at Leeds. That moves Leeds out of the bottom 3 and drops Chelsea to 4th. Moving past the Blues into 3rd place are Aston Villa, who survived a Brighton comeback at the Amex to win a 7-goal thriller themselves. 4-3 that one finished. Villa are the first visitors to win at the Amex since April. Woo. Also midweek, Palace beat Burnley 1-0, Forest beat Wolves 1-0, and Liverpool Sunderland finished 1-1. Another fine performance from the promoted Black Cats. Another head-scratcher for Arne Slot. We're going to start, though, at Elland Road. Wednesday night, Dominic Calvert-Lewin finishing off the visiting Blues with Leeds' 3rd goal in an absolutely stormy performance. Daniel Farke's side, who had lost 4 games in a row but had shown real signs of life when they almost snatched a point at the Etihad on Saturday. Here, with a real rallying cry of a performance against Chelsea, who slipped to 9 points back after their draw against Arsenal on Sunday. The Athletics Leeds rider Beren Cross joins us now. Beren, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. It was. It looked like an absolutely amazing night to be at Elland Road.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been there, James, you'll know it's a place quite unique, really, in English football. I mean, our Chelsea correspondent, Simon Johnson, said last night, of all the places he's been this season so far, that's the best atmosphere he's experienced. When it gets going, I mean, the Leeds crowd don't ask for much, but if you put in some big tackles, play with discipline, play with passion, play with some aggression in some ways, they will back you. And the roof really came off last night, and they scored at the perfect time. Bijol getting the header inside 6 minutes, and then the second goal just before half time. They were just brilliant and absolutely everything they needed after several very, very difficult weeks.
It took a visit from an old enemy and a change of system to kind of reignite spirits there.
Yeah, we noticed at half time at the Etihad on Saturday that they switched to a back 5, went to a 5-3-2. And I know football is is more complex than simple base formations, as Daniel Farke would tell you. But it just clicked. It seemed to unlock every single player in the team. Everybody played better to a man at the Etihad. Yes, they lost that game 3-2, but you would argue they won the second half 2-1 if you're being very specific about it. And there was a lot of hope and also some fear that maybe Farke may revert to the 4-3-3 again last night. But there was huge relief when we saw the team sheet and they remained with the back five. And again, it just worked. And I'm sure over the coming weeks, there will be difficulties, and I'm sure other teams will try to pick holes in this new shape. But for now, for the position they were in, it's such a big step forward. And really, again, to a man, they were brilliant last night, and Chelsea just couldn't live with them.
For now, it's moved Leeds out of the bottom three. Daniel Farke calling the result post-game a long time coming for a side that essentially hadn't always received its dues in terms of results. They really bullied Chelsea on the pitch and on the score sheet.
Yeah, the physical aspect to it was quite key. You could see that Chelsea weren't quite up for it, to be honest. They'd made 5 changes. There were a few players in there that just simply didn't seem ready for what was going to come their way in terms of the challenges that were put in. Obviously, you'll have noted that Esteval was pulled at half-time. I know he's billed as having one of the finest careers ahead of him. But last night, nothing really went for him. Gabriel Gudmundsson, the Swedish left-back, had him in his back pocket. Ultimately, the frustrations boiled over and he kicked out at Gudmundsson quite petulantly. And some referees might have even red-carded him for that. There was no attempt to make a tackle there. It was outright violent conduct in some respects. And he was hooked at the break by Maresca, who was fearing a red card for the 18-year-old. They just seem like rabbits in the headlights, to be honest.
So the question now is, what happens going forward? Having almost got a point at Man City and beaten Chelsea, it's Liverpool on Saturday. Are you expecting the same approach? I guess if you're taking on a team like Liverpool, sitting back and waiting for your opponents to make a mistake is not a bad approach.
Yeah, I think if you could have picked any time, maybe in the last decade, to play Liverpool, you would argue this weekend is the time to do it. I think we're all well aware that they have the individual quality on their day to win any game and could well turn up at Leeds and turn their form around with a heavy win. But as it stands, given what's just come in the past 3 halves of football that Leeds have played and given how Liverpool are playing, it does seem to be perfect timing. And I would fully expect Farke to now stay with the back five. He was much more open once the game had finished last night with the fact that he had always planned to play with the back five after Man City. He didn't want to give too much away pre-match to Maresca. So I think it will be the same formation. You would argue the same personnel. I think Sean Longstaff is probably the only player that's currently out of the team that could come back in when he's fit again. But he's going to be out for several weeks. So I would imagine it'll be the same 11 and at Elland Road again under the lights, the Saturday 5:30 kickoff. It does seem like perfect timing.
Potentially season changing, then we say for Leeds and also for their manager. How much trouble was Daniel Farke in, do you think?
Quite severe trouble, I would say, James. And I think his critics would say that 3 halves of football should not cloud people's judgment. And I think I wouldn't say he's out of the woods yet. I would think certainly that, given it's Liverpool, you would argue a defeat shouldn't see him sacked on Saturday. Maybe the manner of a defeat is more important, but clearly over the next few weeks they need to continue in the vein they showed last night. Thankfully, after several weeks of maybe not getting what they deserved, they got the 3 points last night, and as we know, you need to keep chipping away at that tally they need to stay up this season. So he was under a fair bit of pressure, and I think given they've just come through Aston Villa at home, Man City away, got Chelsea at home last night, and then Liverpool at home on Saturday, there was a lot of trepidation about how badly those games could go. And thankfully, it doesn't seem to be, those worst fears don't seem to be being realised. So he does definitely need, I think, 2 or 3 more games of this sustained improvement to really sort of clear the trouble, if you like. But winning last night certainly buys him a bit more time to prove that.
Beren, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, James.
We were wondering on Sunday whether Chelsea might miss the suspended Moise Caicedo. As Beren was saying, a significant number of changes for that Chelsea team at Elland Road. But their record without Caicedo does make for troubling reading for Chelsea fans. Duncan, you caught the second half of this. Yeah,
I just enjoyed the fact that Calvert-Lewin's goal was the extremely rare 0.99 XG. Briefly, 1.0.
That's what you took from
it. But it's impossible because, you can miss a chance. You can miss any chance. So, but yeah, I mean, it was no goalkeeper on the goal line. It's what every striker wants.
And yet...
I mean, he might have injured himself kicking it, but other than that, he was fine, I think.
I mean, Chelsea now are as close to Nottingham Forest in 16th as they are to Arsenal.
It's a crazy table.
It is. I mean, they're only and they're only 1 point then further ahead of Leeds. They're 10 points clear of Leeds.
Wow.
I'm behind Arsenal. Yeah, so it is a weird table, but I think it also speaks to the fact that maybe there was some getting carried away with a draw on the weekend in a game that really Chelsea, I think, had to win in many ways. And especially, yes, they did really well once going down to 10 men, which was entirely self-inflicted. That wasn't like a misfortune that befell them. But again, against an Arsenal team without both their centre-backs and, various other absentees, I think maybe now that will be reframed as a bit of a missed opportunity.
John Euro saying on the subject of Esteval, surely the song for Esteval has to be the tune of Sit Down by James. I cannot actually hear the song now, says John, without hearing Esteval, 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 Esteval next to me.
Would Chelsea
and you can keep going if you want.
adopt
Esteval.
a Liverpool?
Sorry?
Would Chelsea fans adopt a Liverpool adopted song? Is the question though.
That is the question, isn't it, John? Well, Liverpool next for Leeds. They, of course, on Wednesday night hosted Sunderland. Many people wondering if the underdogs could pull off an upset, and sure enough, they held Sunderland to a point, etc., and so on. Sunderland, in fact, really unlucky. Would you say not to get all three?
That chance at the end, I think that would have been one of the all-time great Premier League assists, and it's reflected in how furious Rofs is that Isidore doesn't score it.
So what happens, Charlie?
I mean, he gathers it from a loopy kind of Canate header from a Liverpool corner. And given that, Sunderland are, on the verge at this point of a famous draw at Liverpool, he'd be well within his rights.
They haven't actually won at Anfield since October 1983. Anyway.
Maybe that was running through his mind and
maybe.
thinking, let's just go for this. Yeah, so Roofs gathers it and could, you might expect him to just collapse and, waste some time, roll around, whatever.
Right.
But no.
Thanks to iFab, people don't do that anymore.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But he spots Isidore seemingly, the whole opposition half is empty, but Isidore is in a position that he might be able to latch onto a pass, and Rose plays this incredibly accurate through ball from out of his hands, sends Isidore through, he rounds Alisson.
Who had Chiesa being the fastest man on the pitch on their bingo card?
Yeah, there's Chiesa to save it off the line, and Rose, there's a clip of his reaction thinking, I've done it. I've played one of the greatest assists of all time, and then it's like banging the turf.
I would posit that Anfield is the home of that specific assist because Alisson's done it a couple of times.
To Salah against City, didn't he?
And
Yeah,
Manchester United as well.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something in the.
To Charlie's point, I think it kind of speaks to the fact that James Pearce, writing for The Athletic, said the fear factor's gone from Anfield, and I think also like the attitude that the Briss has got in the Sunderland squad is so impressive. Like when they lost to Fulham the other day, he kind of came out and said, it's unacceptable, and that you don't normally hear that kind of language from a newly promoted club's manager. They're normally a lot
especially
more
one doing
positive.
so well.
Yeah, and it really feels like they're competitive in every single game, and Liverpool have just lost their swagger to the point where Sunderland feel they can get last-minute equalisers from their own penalty box against them.
It reminds
or
me,
even winners, in fact. Yeah.
Sorry, winners, yeah.
It reminds me of the Moyes season at United, where Old Trafford went from in this fortress to suddenly everyone was like, we can end a hoodoo here. And everyone was going and smashing 50-year runs that they hadn't won there. Yeah, exactly. I mean, West Brom, Newcastle, Everton, all having some fun there.
All right. One potential positive for the home side was the fact that Florian Wirtz sort of scored a goal.
Yeah. Well, for about a minute it looked like he had, and then it got chalked off him.
Right, okay.
But yes, great feat.
Okay, yeah, lovely. Massive deflection of Mukiele. The Sunderland goal had also taken a deflection off Virgil van Dijk, who is amongst those players having a difficult time of it at Anfield. Mo Salah, another of them, he was still on the bench when all this was happening. We think that was him anyway, because there was somebody there essentially dressed like... Did you ever see the Kevin Bacon... actually, no, the Claude Rains Invisible Man. Do you ever see that?
No.
I mean, it's Mo Salah on the bench at Anfield in terms of visually. Liverpool dropped to 11 points off leaders Arsenal. Any fresh conclusions about them or Sunderland from that?
I think the only thing with that, the Salah situation, it just feels entirely unsustainable. It feels kind of Cristiano Ronaldo at Manchester United. I know it's early to say that, but does he seem like the kind of player who's going to be happy being sidelined in this way? I don't know.
It's rare to use the phrase AFCON's come at a good time.
Yeah.
I think it has.
It's mad, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, just how wrong. I mean, everyone got everything about Liverpool this season, but that, you'd be saying probably good to get rid of Salah for a bit.
And Salah only tends to speak when he's kind of unhappy and, wants a new contract. So I imagine there'll be a flurry of interviews if he stays on the bench.
Sunderland, who are 6th now in the table. How many points off top 5?
Top 5?
None.
Oh, it's just goal difference.
3 goals behind Palace.
Wow.
They won't be looking forward to AFCON. I think we've mentioned this before, but they are going to lose a lot of players. Sunderland, yeah.
Right.
And we've also mentioned that on our favourite XG table, they're actually 3rd bottom. So they are overperforming. But teams can overperform for a whole season. It has been known.
Yeah.
Aston Villa, for example. Sunderland next up will be taking their overperforming antics to the Etihad. You have to go back to January 1998 for the last time the Black Cats won at Man City in what we now call the Championship. Kevin Phillips it was with the only goal at Main Road.
He was in the Sunderland end last night, incidentally.
Was he?
Kevin Phillips,
Oh, yeah. Oh, nice. Okay.
Again, a rare player, Phillips, who has more hair in retirement than he did as a player.
Well, I would say that the numbers of such figures is increasing.
Well, yeah, but I think this is natural.
Oh,
for the
what do you think
Bulldog
of
Town hitman, I just think he just,
doesn't cut his hair anymore.
Yeah.
I wonder what his XG
Really
was in that
simple.
30-goal season.
We'll never know.
Yeah.
We could probably work it out.
We'll hear about what Man City did on Tuesday soon enough, but can you rule out Sunderland getting something at the Etihad?
I can.
Okay.
I don't think it will happen. I think, having to play Liverpool away and then with a day's less rest going to Etihad, I imagine that would have taken a huge amount out of them. City didn't rotate at all against Fulham. You'd think they would and have the squad that they could absolutely do that. So, yes. We saw, didn't we, Bournemouth's bubble burst a little bit in a City away game. And,
right.
I think City will have too much for them, as great as they've been.
Also, Wednesday night, beating Brentford 2-0. Mikel Merino, who's a useful guy to have around with the first goal and then setting up the second, which didn't come until the 91st minute, 80 minutes after his opener, 80 sometimes nervous minutes for the Premier League leaders. But Merino, 4 goals and 3 assists in the last 6 matches. Should they just give him the starting centre-forward role and have done with it?
He's another one. Talk about how wrong or how unpredictable something would have been. Arsenal went and spent whatever it was, 60 million on Gyökeres. This sort of finally they've got a number 9. They've also got Kai Havertz. The idea that Merino, he did it in extremis last season and did really well, but in a kind of, he was an emergency player who, he'd never played at any level as a striker until being chucked in February to do it and scored 2 in that game away at Leicester. He is a remarkable player because I just can't really think of an equivalent to him. He's so unique. And I imagine for opposition teams, it is, and for centre-backs, it is quite a strange assignment. What do you do with this guy? He doesn't take any sort of regular striking positions until all of a sudden he does pop up and scores a header.
Michael Cox is pointing out that in the games where he has just operated as a sort of static number 9, he's not been very good.
No.
But this current role where he kind of drops deep and then just pops up, he's such a good header of the ball.
Remember that one in the Euros for Spain, though? Woof.
Yeah.
He gets in front of his man last night, doesn't he? I think Alan Smith said on comms he's thinking like a centre forward now, and it does feel that way.
I'd argue that first goal was one of the most aesthetically pleasing basic goals you'll ever see. A little drag
overlapping
pass from Madueke, lovely dinked cross from Ben White, who was really impressive on his return to the team, and then Merino doing what everyone tells kids to do with headers is head it down. Well, they say don't head the ball these days, but also if you do, head it down.
He scored this calendar year 21 goals for club and country.
Wow.
For a player who started it, the perception being he was a fairly workmanlike centre mid. He was bought as a Xhaka replacement. So it's kind of the equivalent of Xhaka suddenly repurposing himself as this sort of prolific striker.
Arsenal have been quite fortunate with kind of the signings that I think fans have thought have been underwhelming in the last few years. When they signed David Raya, it was like, well, why do we need him? We've got Aaron Ramsdale, but they've all sort of come
Great
good.
save he made last night.
He did, yeah. I think Merino, though, it's less fortune and more incredible coaching. it's to have actually repurposed this guy and made it work. To be without 3 strikers and just then discover, find a way of making this work is
So Gyökeres is already back, and Havertz is
still a little bit away.
A couple of weeks away.
Yeah.
They can't send him to the AFCON, can they? Well, Arsenal extending their unbeaten run to 18 matches in all competitions. They are 5 points clear. Next up, though,
Just mention the injuries because that.
Oh, well, I was going to get onto that now. But, we can mention it now. Go on, mention those injuries.
Yeah, injuries in Arsenal go hand in hand, but there are a couple more. In that game, Mosquera went off, so down to the last 400 centre-backs. And then, more worryingly, Declan Rice was substituted at the end, sort of pointing at his calf, although, as Dan reported this morning, he said afterwards that he's going to be fine.
Oh, did he?
I think so, yeah.
He told Sky, apparently, off mic.
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought you were going to say Arteta had a whinge at the Premier League as well, which I was fairly unsympathetic about, to be honest, given that he's kept Rice on the pitch when Arsenal were cruising. I mean, notably against Spurs and Bayern, he played 90 minutes when they were pretty comfortable in the last kind of 10, 12 minutes of both those games. But yeah, he said afterwards that the Premier League needs to consider the well-being of the players. And I think he's unhappy that Arsenal have got a 12:30 kickoff on Saturday against Villa. So it is 3 games in 7 days, but Wednesday to Saturday is a pretty standard schedule, isn't it?
Although,
it surprised me a bit.
If you played on Wednesday in the Champions League, you wouldn't be playing at 12:30.
Also true.
Yes, well, I guess that is his gripe.
Yeah.
When did Villa play? Also on Wednesday. But equally, that doesn't help the well-being of the players for either team. Villa are arguably in even better form than Arsenal, could you say?
Yeah, they've won 6 in a row, but it's very hard to remember any they played in most of those wins,
right?
Barring last night.
Well, you can make it 12 wins in 14 in all competitions. After the terrible start they had when they didn't win any of their first 6, it's quite the turnaround. And
so that's in all comps, though, isn't it? So
that is in all comps.
2 are Europa League. So
all right, but they are in good form.
No, they are 4 straight Premier League wins is never easy at any time.
Oh,
I mean, they don't have the best XG as well, isn't that?
Yeah, they're scoring a lot from outside the box.
Right.
I think they're just on one of those runs.
Right.
But it may well continue on Saturday.
Here's another number, 20. 20 out of 25 home matches that Villa have won. While the Gunners have only drawn their last 2 away games. That was at Sunderland and Chelsea. Plus, Unai Emery is a manager who's done more to scupper the championship hopes of his old club than most people in recent years, and not just when he was actually managing them either. Last season, Villa came from 2-0 down at the Emirates to take a point, and 2 seasons ago, Villa did the double over Arsenal, who went on to lose the title by 2 points. So
I think they lost 5 games and 2 were to Villa. That's
2 were to Villa. So Villa is a key fixture in your Arsenal potential title run calendar.
It's quite an odd thing because for the second weekend running, Arsenal are playing a team 6 points behind them with the chance to kind of really insert themselves into the title race. And if we were talking about Chelsea in that way, I haven't really heard the same said about Villa. And, maybe that is, well, I wouldn't have thought that's to do with those underlying numbers. I think it's just with a general impression that they probably wouldn't be able to last the distance. But, if they win, they're 3 points behind Arsenal.
And also in one of the quirks of the Premier League fixture computer that baffles continentals, Arsenal will play at home to Villa on December the 30th. There's a quick turnaround. Most countries will do just standard. Yeah,
which is better.
We're different. Well, I don't know.
I think it is.
I like that quirk.
I like the unpredictability.
Do you like the unpredictability?
Yeah. I don't want the uniformity.
When you go in a
we played them in
would you
match
like
day 15. We're going
B to be followed by M, for example, and then throw a Q in there.
Keep us guessing.
Anything else on this game?
Well, I think Villa should feel as if it's an opportunity. I mean, if Mosquera doesn't play and Saliba's not back, then it's a really makeshift defence.
Especially with Watkins.
And Watkins back scoring, and Villa have got a pretty full squad. I mean, Barkley's injured, and we don't know about Martinez. He pulled out in the warm-up yesterday.
Right.
But
Dan, thank you. Though we haven't even mentioned what Villa got up to midweek. 4-3, their victory down at the Amex. They were 2-0 down in that game. And as I mentioned at the start, Brighton hadn't actually lost at home since the start of April, when Villa again managed to get the win there. What was their performance like? Were you able to see any of this?
Yeah, I saw some of it. I think it was a great fight back, and I think the most encouraging thing, as I just mentioned, is that Ollie Watkins scored twice. I don't know if Duncan's got any numbers on him, but he'd been on a long drought before that, and it really felt like he was struggling for fitness, and he'd kind of fallen out of a rhythm. So to get him back, especially as you said, against not just one, but potentially 2 quite big games against Arsenal this month, feels like great timing for Villa and for him.
The club he supported and has scored against many times.
He obviously in that game in 23-24 ended Arsenal's title, but then when they showed Was it later, a few weeks later, when it actually did fail? They showed the Villa players celebrating that game, and Ollie Watkins notably just sat there, which I always think, football is it's their job. It's your job, and they will score when they get a chance. But he may not have been happy about it. And weirdly, I don't think he's been in good form for most of this year, since he was obviously heavily linked with moving to Arsenal in the January transfer window.
Right.
So there's many narratives all coming together at 12:31.
So once again from Duncan, who said narratives coming together. Woof, that's your Saturday lunchtime game. Elsewhere on Wednesday night, though, in the Premier League, while Leeds climbed out of the bottom three, the other two sides in there sank a little deeper. Wolves are now 12 points from safety after losing 1-0 at home to Nottingham Forest. They've now lost 3 games out of 3 under Rob Edwards. Igor Jesus had 1 goal ruled out after a lengthy delay, but eventually got the game's only goal, his 6th of the season. First in the Premier League. Yeah, interesting that. Burnley also lost 1-0 at home to Crystal Palace. Daniel Munoz on the stroke of half-time. That's now 5 defeats in a row for Burnley, and Palace have risen to 5th. Wow, who was watching, who was clever, who was prescient enough to choose Fulham, Manchester City for their Tuesday night entertainment? Duncan. They were richly rewarded, weren't they?
They were.
And yet, it seemed for so long that game was heading in a very different direction. Manchester City, you may know, no team in the history of English League football has as good a record against any other club as City do with Fulham. And when they went 3-0 up, with most of the first half played, it looked like yet another big City win.
Yeah, it's rare to see a game pivot from an enjoyable romp to an instant classic so quickly. But, obviously the initial interest was around Haaland reaching 100 goals faster than anyone, beating Alan Shearer's record of 124 games, doing it in 111. Hit the post early on.
On a glorious assist from Phil Foden.
Yeah, but then did it with a lovely sort of swept finish. And yeah, it looked like City were going to romp to a win that would have put them, they got 3 points either way, but I think the game it raised more questions.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? And what answers does it give Marco Silva on the Fulham bench as well is one other thing we might talk about. So 3-0 it went, but then just before half-time, Emil Smith-Rowe with another nice header. Yeah, makes it 3-1. Some consolation perhaps. Man City respond by slapping them back with another 2 goals to make it 5-1. At this point, it really looks like it is all over. But at around about the time you switch over from the Spurs-Newcastle game, Charlie, Chukwueze comes in. Well, at first, Iwobi makes it 5-2.
With a lovely finish.
Really good finish, yeah.
And then Chukwueze, who's never been a prolific scorer, bags 2 in the space of 5-6 minutes. Remarkable.
It was very well timed because it was half-time of the Spurs game, just as Fulham were getting that third and it was becoming really interesting. And then that made the half-time, and let's be honest, from that first half of Spurs.
Which wasn't great.
No, it really wasn't. It did have that feel, as the goal started going, it had that slight feeling of when you're at a party talking to someone and you can hear loads of people laughing and having what seems like a really fun conversation in the other corner of the room, and you're kind of like, can I hurry this along?
What's your go-to technique?
Just walk away.
Yeah.
Really? Duncan, are you just a walk awayer?
Yeah.
No, you can't just walk away.
You are, though, aren't you?
No, I'm not.
You just...
No.
Surely you could just get a
Toilet
drink.
card.
Get a drink is
always-
standard
it's
one.
always
Down
there.
your drink and
Fake
say,
a shit. Fake a shit.
That's the thing. If you're miles from finishing your drink and you're kind of like, how do I?
Well, you've worked that wrong, haven't you, really?
Well, yeah.
Anyway, back to this game.
Is there a better stadium for a sort of rainy midweek game than Craven Cottage, particularly with the slightly adjusted camera angle in the new stand, which I think is the best camera angle in the Premier League?
Oh, really?
It kind of almost you're on top of the game, and it
A Sensi soccer vibe.
a little bit, yeah, and or maybe kick off too a little bit more, but
Right.
as Fulham were sort of piling on the pressure, and they very nearly could have made it 5-5, but for that Guardiola clearance you mentioned earlier, it sort of literally sucked you in. Literally and figuratively.
There was also that pullback just before, which there were Fulham had packed men in the box, and you just needed to pick someone out, and he somehow It kind of missed everyone. But then, they had that late one. Was it going in, the Gvardiol? I still haven't seen. It was going in because they weren't totally sure in comps. It did look like it was. It's actually a really good clearance as well. He anticipates it really well.
Yeah. And I did enjoy the difference in noise from the Fulham fans from Smith Rowe's, very consolation-y goal to make it 3-1, and then the noise for the fourth, which was, the proverbial roof coming off, the swimming pool shattering.
A boost perhaps for them ahead of their weekend's game, which is against Duncan.
Crystal Palace at 4:30 on Sunday. Which,
home or away?
At home. So people can tune in for the camera angle and probably some rain. So yeah.
Yeah, very possibly. Very possibly. For Man City though, are there some serious questions here already? Last weekend against Leeds, we saw them let a 2-goal lead slip. And here, they were pretty panicked in that second half, Dan.
Yeah, they were. They look like they're a team that knows how to score, but struggled to keep them out. I mean, my sort of prevailing theory on Manchester City is really, really good when they've got a fit Rodri in the team, and really
are there numbers to back that up?
really not very good when they don't. And I know it's more complex than that, but it does seem like whenever he's missing, they feel like a team that can be got at and are fallible and are kind of fun but slightly unserious and kind of lose that sheen that they have with him in the side, which it reminds me a bit of Chelsea and Caicedo as well. There are numbers there. When you've got a midfielder that can literally do everything on the pitch, it's very hard when that player's out the team.
I mean, the Rodri question is one that's been pretty well documented for a while now. I guess even since that Champions League final. It did seem that Guardiola had managed to find alternatives to get his team ticking even without Rodri. But what did you make of their second half performance?
I mean, Nico Gonzalez is quite good, but he is quite inconsistent still. And I think the concern I'd have maybe is Donnarumma seems a little bit wayward. I think he's definitely getting used to our league. He's always been slightly weak on crosses, but he's obviously getting battered from pillar to post in games, and Fulham definitely targeted him in the second half. So, and
on the verge of becoming the first Premier League keeper to get a 5 yellow card ban.
Yeah, Jens Lehmann.
History.
Jens Lehmann got 8 in a season in 06-07 for an incredible variety of offences. But yeah.
So for Donnarumma, it's 3 for dissent and 1 for time wasting. But as you say, one more yellow card between now and
it resets at the start of game week 20, I believe. At least that's always what it was.
So about 6 matches now to go. It's remarkable that he would pick up 4 yellow cards already at this point of the season. And he didn't start the season with Man City.
No, it's an incredible ratio. Maybe speaks to how rattled he's been by our league.
Jefferson Lerma of goalkeepers, they call it. We'll see it again and again down the years, won't we? Remember that game when Fulham lost 4-5 to Man City, we'll say. And we'll say, yeah, we do remember, yeah.
I mean, I guess the only thing you'd say with City is from those 2 games, they have clung on and that no harm's been done, despite the sort of mad capers from it, and so they've stayed on Arsenal's coattails. I said this last week. They've never lost a title race under Pep. The only time they've lost it is when they've not been in it. So if they can, they will think, I'm sure, if they can just stay in the room, which they are doing, they'll always have a chance
and get Rodri fit
Get Rodri fit. Well, they're 5 points back at the moment, but should Arsenal drop points again away from home this weekend and City win their clash at home to Sunderland, big ifs, perhaps, but we shall see, then we might see that margin alter. Thomas Frank's Tottenham trouble latest. Spurs went to St James's Park on Tuesday night, and after Sunday's dismal defeat to Fulham, they picked up a point and some positives. Yeah. Charlie?
I mean, ish.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, yes, there were positives in that they, tough place to go.
Yep.
They fought back twice. And,
that penalty was a bit iffy.
Yeah.
The second Newcastle goal.
Yeah, it was. But they still only had 2 shots on target. None in the first half for the 4th Premier League game running. Created a little bit more. It is a very low bar that we're talking about here. I mean, Bergvall in the first half had a kind of improvised flick over, and it was kind of like, wow, like what a chance, like what a move, like they've
what a shot.
They've passed forward and like hit the ball towards goal, like what is this? But really, Newcastle were much the better team, were raging about not winning. I think if Spurs had it sounds harsh because it is a good result. The result is good, but I don't think there was loads in the performance that told you a corner had been turned. They still made creating chances look not just hard, borderline impossible. Like when you're watching them, sometimes you're kind of like, you sort of forget how chances can be created because it's sort of like, but there's no space. How does one do this?
Why didn't Newcastle beat them then?
Well, I mean, they conceded a very weird second equaliser.
Right.
Which...
Weird, was it? Or strangely magnificent?
I mean, both.
Right.
It was neither at the same time.
It was a very odd one. I mean, Romero's on the floor.
Yes.
Clambers back up and does this sort of overhead bicycle kick off his shin.
Right, in slow motion.
In slow motion that they're about... Basically, every Newcastle player is between him and the goal. It somehow misses them all. And Ramsdale really should be saving. I mean, clearly he's unsighted, but... and they were wasteful, Newcastle, with the chances they created.
We did some bowling, didn't we, at the Athletics Christmas shindig last week?
Sure did.
And it felt a little bit like that, as you was like, the ball's down, it's going down the lane, let's see what happens. And it took so long. And Ramsdale, I mean, he may have been unsighted, but I don't think he covered himself in joy.
Good night for Nick Pope.
All right. Newcastle with their underwhelming league campaign continuing then, but no real reasons for Spurs to feel that there's an uptick on the horizon?
I don't know. I mean, what did you think, Dan? Maybe I'm being overly harsh, but it felt a little bit like more of the same, but this time they got a couple of goals.
Yeah, I think as you said, you can paint it as a real positive, because it's been a bogey ground for them, St James's Park, over the last few seasons, and they've had some proper hidings there as well. But there wasn't a huge amount in the performance to suggest they've massively turned a corner. The real problem for Frank at the moment isn't the away form. I mean, yeah, they got spanked at Arsenal, but it's the home form.
Best in the league, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the home form has been the concern. And after the Fulham game, it really felt like the dressing room and the crowd were at loggerheads. There's been some issues with the players and Frank, obviously, Van der Ven and Spence kind of ignoring him a few weeks ago. So it feels like there are a lot of threads broken at Spurs.
Van der Ven's presence on the bench on Wednesday, was that him being rested because of the fixture pile-up?
Van der Ven has had a lot of hamstring injuries as well.
Okay.
It would totally make sense to rest him. And I do think part of what made this midweek very entertaining and a bit zany was the fact that everyone was rotating, because no one can play 3 intense Premier League games in a week. It's too much.
Brentford, who clearly saw the Spurs game as the one to target this week.
Quite rightly.
But Dan, if you can don your Spurs hat again for a moment, where do you sit among the spectrum of Spurs fans that feel that there is hope, there isn't hope, time should be given, time should absolutely not be given to the current?
Yeah, so I'm the Athletics Frank out correspondent at the
Are
moment.
you?
I'm just being brought on all the podcasts to say
To kick him.
He's not right. Yeah, I don't mind saying that. My instinct is that it's Nuno all over again. In that Frank's obviously a very capable coach. I think he's been a brilliant coach before Spurs. I think probably if he is sacked, he will be a brilliant coach somewhere else after Spurs. But I don't think he's right for Spurs. And I think the big question for me at the moment is really just, can he change? Because the performances and the approach, particularly in the Arsenal and Chelsea games, where they posted the lowest XG, I think, in pretty much since XG began. It was dreadful. That approach clearly isn't sustainable. So the big question is he prepared to be more front foot, take the game to these opponents? Because that's what Spurs fans want to see. And there's no future in playing the way he has played in the majority of games so far, I think.
Well, they're at home to his former club, Brentford, this Saturday, 3:00. Spurs, under Frank, have the second worst home record in the division. They haven't won at home since the opening day of the season. And since that day, they've had an XG of less than 1 in all of their 6 home matches, which is kind of the most scary stat of all, I think, no?
That's terrible. I mean, that is terrible.
I mean, Wolves haven't scored in 5 games, and they've got a higher XG than Spurs in those games.
I do think it is, like, just bigger picture, it is interesting that there are so few examples of a Frank in the Premier League, of a manager going from a kind of upwardly mobile mid-table club to one of the, in inverted commas, big 6, and it actually working. Like that would seem like such a common sense approach, and yet, apart from Pochettino, Harry Redknapp, it seems to be littered And players, it works all the time. I mean, Declan Rice, Caicedo, Eze, all these players seem to be able to make the step up. But yeah, there's the Roy Hodgsons or the Graham Potters, and now Thomas Frank, David Moyes. Yeah,
the Athletics Tactics podcast covered this very subject last week.
Oh, did they? What did they say?
Essentially what Charlie just said. So yeah, if a nice.
But the two examples that you do give of it working, both did happen at Tottenham.
They did, yeah. But I mean, Nuno's another example of it really flopping.
Yeah,
I think the key difference. I mean, Harry Redknapp doesn't fall into this category, but Pochettino, I think, was kind of ahead of the curve tactically. He at the time the only coach in the Premier League who was pressing like he was playing the kind of football was Klopp. Guardiola hadn't arrived yet. So he was really ahead of the curve. And I think Frank, for all his qualities, and he is clearly a really good coach, but I don't think he's ahead of the curve. And I think for Spurs to really be successful, presuming the ownership continues the model broadly that they've had over the last 25 years, I think they really need a coach at the cutting edge.
You need a coach to come in and kind of almost be bigger than the team, bigger than the club.
Like a Mourinho, someone like that.
Or an Ange for a time.
For a time, yeah.
So are you advocating change immediately?
Well, look, I don't want to say he's got to go because you can be made to look very stupid in football, obviously. But from what I've seen, this is not going to work.
Right.
This approach. So as I said, it's either he changes or it's a kind of slow death, I think.
And it's kind of made worse by the fact that Brentford, many tipped them to struggle as soon as Frank left, and they've actually maybe even improved. And, they look really good.
Well, they gave Arsenal a far harder game last night.
Than Spurs did.
So as
you said, he's playing his former assistant, or his former set piece coach, on Saturday at home when the atmosphere will be really difficult if Spurs don't make a good start. So that could be a tough afternoon for Spurs.
Brentford and Spurs both on 19 points as it stands, although Spurs have somehow contrived to have a better goal difference. As for Newcastle, fresh from that 2-2 draw with Tottenham, they also will see their manager take up against his old club this weekend. Saturday at 3 o'clock, they are hosting Burnley, where Eddie had a brief and not particularly happy spell back in, when was that? In the mid-noughties, I think, wasn't it? He left Bournemouth, went there, came back down again. Oh, Scott Parker also up against his former club, although he never managed Newcastle, but he did play for them between 2005 and 2007. Magpies have won their last 6 meetings with the Clarets, and Burnley, as we mentioned before, have lost 5 in a row. So, yeah, we shall see. Also coming up on the weekend, on Sunday, you've got Fulham against Palace and Brighton against West Ham. Saturday, 3 o'clock, Bournemouth host Chelsea and Everton take on Nottingham Forest. Everton, who were 1-0 winners Tuesday at Bournemouth, again, we haven't actually particularly mentioned yet. Jack Grealish there with a deflected effort, getting Everton their second straight away victory. Afterwards, Jack Grealish effusive, I would say, not even praised love, in his love for manager David Moyes. Yeah,
really nice.
It was a touching post-game interview. Bournemouth are on a really bad run. They've only picked up 1 point from their last 15 available, so from their last 5 matches. They have slumped to 14th spot. Crikey, why? Why is that?
I think it all comes from Duncan predicting they'd get in the top 4. And ever since that moment...
Did you do that, Duncan?
It's all gone downhill for them.
In this very room, yeah. I think it's been pinned on dressing rooms up and down the country. So, yeah. No, I think they are that sort of team. They do go on these good spells and then follow it with a bad spell. But I think it's slightly unrepresentative. They did play all right against Everton. So,
I mean, their manager's another one, Iraola, who obviously has been linked with Spurs and those kinds of jobs. And I don't know, I'd be curious to see how he would, whether he could kind of scale what he's done at Bournemouth.
To my point, I do think he is feels like he is kind of ahead of the curve tactically and sort of playing the kind of football that people are looking at and saying, because I think Guardiola said he was influenced by him last season or the season before. So, that he strikes me as maybe the one Spurs should have gone for.
And he's a good example as well. Like, my view on Frank is that I just don't see that higher ceiling for him. Like, I don't really see what's like what is it that Spurs fans can dream about doing under Thomas Frank. It feels like, he's a really solid kind of sensible coach who could stabilise them. But I don't think many are dreaming like, wow, we could win the Premier League or something with this guy. Whereas someone like Iraola, I'm not saying it's anything like a guarantee, but at least there is a potentially huge upside because he is exciting in his approach. And we've seen that kind of player.
And he's from the Basque Country, where
Exactly.
all managers
Where all good managers
spawn from a little spot under a tree.
There you go. Well, Bournemouth with Iraola will be hosting Chelsea, as mentioned, at the weekend. And loads to look forward to. Sunday evening, of course, Totally Football Show will be rounding up all of the weekend's games. Matt Davis-Adams is going to be hosting that one. Of course, it's available live on YouTube. There might also be some reaction there to the MLS Cup final, which is Saturday night. Lionel Messi's Inter Miami taking on Thomas Muller's Vancouver Whitecaps. Two teams who've never won the trophy before. There you go.
Very mid-noughties Champions League vibes.
Speaking of MLS, you might have seen that Columbus Crew's Wilfred Nancy is now the new manager of Celtic, taking over from interim manager Martin O'Neill, who did an absolutely bang-up job. He had 8 games in charge. He won 7 of them, finished off with a 1-0 win against Dundee Wednesday night, and they have moved to level on points now with leaders Hearts. And they have a game in hand as well.
Shame, isn't
I'm
it?
really
It's a
saddened
shame.
by it. I was in Glasgow when Hearts were about to play Celtic, and they were speaking to a lot of Hearts fans.
Yeah.
They were so excited, and then they obviously beat Celtic in that game. Could this be the year? And it's barely December, and it feels like that dream's already
it's already
extinguished. Well, I mean, the direction of travel doesn't feel good.
MLS, does he know their league?
Yeah, that is. Yeah, we don't know.
We don't know?
O'Neill might be the first former Totally Football Show guest to get, to rack up points in a Manager of the Month award. So.
I don't know. Mauricio Pochettino could be another shout for
Yeah,
that.
fair.
Well, and a sort of an interesting scenario would be if they're all pining to get O'Neill back in a few weeks or months.
Wow,
if,
7 wins in
Nancy
8.
struggles. Yeah, I think he said, his wife told him he was going to fail, but he steadied the ship nicely.
What a marriage.
I know, imagine that.
I mean, O'Neill had just tipped Hearts to go on and win it, hadn't he? He
Yes,
went and
famously.
ruined that by taking over at Celtic and stabilising.
And maybe one of the few people in the country who doesn't think that Keith Andrews is doing a good job at Brentford. So,
Martin O'Neill. When did he say that?
well, they've had a quite long-standing grudge.
Oh, have they?
to the
Well,
end.
and Roy Keane. Doesn't Roy Keane also really
Yeah.
dislike Keith Andrews?
So
Really? I didn't know there was all this Keith Andrews
Andrews
hate
was
out
a pundit when O'Neill and Keane were at Ireland, and he was quite critical, and they took
Oh, I
umbrage.
see.
So-
Right. Well, be careful what you say when you're a pundit.
Yeah.
You could be sitting on a managerial bench and getting it back. Dan, it could be Thomas Frank on the show next season saying, "What's this Dan character up to?"
Luckily, I've already had that from Ange. So, but luckily, I think Frank doesn't sort of consume content in the same way that Postecoglou did. So,
Right.
So Dan can tee off about
yeah,
him.
I hope I'm safe.
You'll find out at tomorrow's press conference that you're going to.
This afternoon's press
This afternoon.
conference.
There you go.
Yes, I could be getting a bollocking in a mere matter of hours.
Many thanks to producer Charlie, to you, Dan, for being with us today.
Pleasure,
The,
thank you.
Loof exit facilitating earlier on. Many thanks to Duncan as well, and to Charlie, and to you, listener. Oh, and to Jake as well, who put this all up on video. And back on Saturday with that totally extra on the World Cup draw. And then Matt in the hot seat on Sunday night. Excellent. Have yourself a great time till we speak again. For now, from all of us here, it's goodbye. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.